The stars above Earth flickered and died. Not really, of course. They were simply blocked by something massive. Something that had no right to be there. Admiral Zixthor stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. His 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he looked at the blue planet below. It was beautiful, he supposed, in a primitive way. Lots of water, lots of clouds, lots of life that would soon bow to the Kaldrith Empire. Status report, he commanded, his voice a deep rumble that made junior officers straighten their backs. 500 ships in formation, Admiral, his second officer reported. All weapon systems ready. Shields at full power. The planet shows no signs of advanced defense networks. Zixthor clicked his mandibles together, a gesture of amusement among his people. Of course they don't. Look at their technology. Nuclear fission. Chemical rockets. They barely made it to their own moon. He waved a clawed hand dismissively. This will be the easiest conquest of my career. The Kaldrith Empire had conquered 847 star systems. This would be number 848. The humans would surrender within hours or they would be purified. It was always the same. Species either joined the Empire or died. Simple, clean, efficient. Prepare the standard broadcast, Zixthor ordered. Give them 24 hours to respond. Across Earth, alarms began to sound. Not the kind that made people panic in the streets. These were quiet alarms. The kind that only reached certain rooms in certain buildings where certain people made very serious decisions. General Sarah, Chen was in her office at the Global Defense Command when her screen lit up with red warnings. She had been expecting this call for 30 years. She picked up her coffee, took a slow sip, and pressed the accept button. They're here, she said simply. The faces of world leaders appeared on her screen. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry. A few, those who knew what she knew, looked almost relieved. How many ships? The American president asked. 500, Chen replied. Standard Kaldrith Expeditionary Force according to our intelligence. Can we win? Asked the Chinese premier. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Win? Mr. Premier, we won't even need to get out of our chairs. The Russian president, a woman who had served in the military before politics, leaned forward. How long do we wait? They gave us 24 hours, Chen said. I say we give them the full time. Let them feel confident. Let them think they've already won. And then, asked the Indian Prime Minister, and then we remind them why humanity never left home. The Kaldrith broadcast reached every television, every computer, every phone on Earth. The translation was rough, processed through algorithms that had never encountered human language before, but the message was clear enough. People of the planet Earth, the voice said, deep and inhuman. You have been chosen to join the Kaldrith Empire. This is an honor. You will surrender all weapons. You will surrender all governments. You will serve. Those who resist will be eliminated. Those who comply will be allowed to live. You have 24 hours to broadcast your acceptance. If you refuse, we will begin purification protocols. The broadcast ended. For a moment, Earth was silent. Then slowly people began to react. Some cried. Some prayed. Some ran to bunkers that wouldn't save them from orbital weapons. But most strangely went about their day. They went to work. They had dinner with their families. They watched the news, which showed experts debating what would happen next. The experts didn't know. Only a few people on Earth knew the truth. In Geneva, Ambassador Krell materialized on the landing pad designated for diplomatic missions. He was Kaldrith, but smaller than the warriors, with lighter armor and more decorative markings. He had done this 800 times before. Land, demand surrender, accept their fear. Leave with another conquest complete. He was met by a single human woman. She was old, gray-haired, wearing a simple business suit. She smiled at him like he was a dinner guest, not a conqueror. Ambassador Krell, she said, welcome to Earth. I'm Secretary Zhao of the United Nations. Krell clicked his mandibles in confusion. You are not afraid? Should I be? Secretary Zhao asked. She gestured to a building nearby. Would you like some tea? We have 24 hours. We should talk. Inside the meeting room, Krell presented his demands. Secretary Zhao listened politely, nodding occasionally, making notes on a tablet. When he finished, she set down her tablet and folded her hands. Thank you for that presentation, she said. Now let me make our counteroffer. You leave. Right now. Take your 500 ships and go home. We'll forget this ever happened. No harm, no foul, as we say. Krell stared at her. Then he began to laugh, a clicking, chittering sound. You think you can negotiate? You have nothing. We could destroy your entire planet in minutes. Perhaps, Secretary Zhao said calmly. But you won't. Because if you try, none of your ships will make it home to tell the story. She stood up and walked to the window. Ambassador, let me tell you something about humanity. We are very good at three things. We're good at art, we're good at kindness, and we're very, very good at violence. Your technology is primitive, Krell said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. Our visible technology is primitive, Secretary Zhao corrected. We made it look that way on purpose. Do you know why humanity never left our solar system, Ambassador? Not because we couldn't, because we were afraid of ourselves. She turned to face him. 60 years ago, we nearly destroyed our own planet. We built weapons that could kill billions, and then we realized something. If we went out into the galaxy with those weapons, we would become monsters. So we made a choice. We would stay home until we grew up, until we were wise enough to carry such terrible power. Krell shifted uncomfortably. I do not believe you. You don't have to believe me, Secretary Zhao said. Just take our offer back to your admiral. Leave now. Last chance, Krell stood. We will not leave. Your planet will burn, Secretary Zhao sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. In orbit, Admiral Zixthor received Krell's report. The human offer was not even worth considering. They were bluffing. They had to be. His sensors showed no major weapon platforms, no hidden fleets, nothing but satellites and space stations that could barely hold air inside them. Begin deployment, he ordered. Send landing craft to their major cities. Show them we are serious. 100 landing craft launched from the Kaldrith fleet. Each carried 1,000 soldiers. They would land in New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Delhi, Tokyo, and 50 other cities. A show of force. The humans would see Kaldrith warriors in their streets and they would surrender. They always did. General Chen watched the landing craft descend. She checked her watch. 23 hours and 47 minutes since the ultimatum. Close enough. She picked up her phone and made a call. Just one. To a facility buried deep under a mountain in Colorado. This is General Chen, she said. Authorization code Omega 9 Tango. Release all safety protocols. Activate all defense platforms. Rules of engagement total. There was a pause. Then a young man's voice, shaking slightly, responded. Confirmed, General. Weapons free. God help them. Chen set down the phone. She felt no joy, no anger. Just a deep, tired sadness. They had given the Kaldrith every chance. Now humanity would do what it did best. Survive. High above Earth, in the cold darkness of space, thousands of objects that had been floating dead and silent for decades suddenly came to life. They had been there all along, disguised as space junk, as defunct satellites, as harmless debris. The Kaldrith sensors had seen them and dismissed them. That was their final mistake. General Chen spoke quietly, almost to herself. Gentlemen, ladies, let's show them why we stayed home. The war was about to begin, and it would be over before the Kaldrith even understood what had killed them. The Kaldrith intelligence officers worked through the night, analyzing every piece of human communication they could intercept. Admiral Zixthor wanted to know his enemy, even if that enemy was primitive and weak. It was proper military protocol. What they found confused them. Admiral, the intelligence chief said, her voice uncertain. The humans are strange. Strange how? Zixthor asked, not looking up from his tactical displays. Their entertainment broadcasts. They show constant warfare, massive battles, planetary destruction, invasion scenarios. They seem obsessed with conflict and survival. Zixthor clicked his mandibles in amusement. Fear propaganda. Many primitive species do this. They imagine themselves as warriors to feel braver. It means nothing. There's more, sir. Their military communications are completely open. No encryption. We can read everything. Now Zixthor looked up. Everything? Yes, sir. They're not even trying to hide their defensive positions, troop movements, weapon specifications. It's all there. This did strike Zixthor as odd, but he was a practical commander. If the enemy was foolish enough to broadcast their defenses, he would use that information. Prepare attack patterns based on their defensive positions. If they want to tell us where to strike, we'll oblige them. What Admiral Zixthor didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that he was seeing exactly what humanity wanted him to see. The real defenses, the real weapons, existed in files that weren't connected to any network, written on paper, stored in human minds, hidden in plain sight as space junk and defunct satellites. In a bunker deep beneath Geneva, Secretary Zhao sat with General Chen and a dozen other key figures. They watched the Caldrith fleet on screens, watched the landing craft descending toward major cities. They fell for it, Chen said quietly. They think we're showing them our real defenses. Of course they did, replied Dr. James Morrison, head of the Planetary Defense Research Division. Powerful empires always underestimate those they consider weak. It's a pattern that's repeated throughout human history. The Romans underestimated the tribes. The British underestimated the colonies. Hitler underestimated Russia. And now the Caldrith underestimate us. Tell me again why we never left, Secretary Zhao said. I want to remember why we made this choice. Dr. Morrison pulled up a hologram. It showed Earth from space, beautiful and blue. Then it showed Earth as it almost was. Burned. Dead. Gray with ash and radiation. 62 years ago, Morrison began, we developed the first singularity weapon, a device that could create a miniature black hole, sustain it for exactly 3 seconds, and then let it evaporate. That 3 seconds was enough to consume an entire city. The weapon was clean. No radiation, no fallout. Just gone. He pulled up another image. This one showed a weapon that looked almost simple, like a large rifle. 60 years ago, we developed causality-breaking projectiles, bullets that existed in a quantum superposition state until they hit their target, which meant, effectively, they hit their target before you even pulled the trigger. Point defense became meaningless. Dodging became meaningless. If you were targeted, you were already dead. Another image. This one showed Earth surrounded by a shimmering field. 58 years ago, we developed planetary shields that could absorb the energy of a star-going supernova. We tested it by pointing every nuclear weapon on Earth at one spot and detonating them simultaneously. The shield didn't even flicker. Secretary Zhao stared at the images. We could have conquered the galaxy. Yes, Morrison agreed. We could have, and we would have become the very thing we feared. Conquerors, destroyers, monsters. He closed the hologram. So we made a choice. We would master these terrible weapons, yes, but we would never use them except in defense of our home. We would wait here, in our solar system, until we were wise enough to carry such power into the stars, until we had matured as a species. And now? Chen asked. Now someone came to our home with violent intent, Morrison said, and they're about to learn why even we were afraid of ourselves. In orbit, the Caldrith landing craft continued their descent. Inside one of them, Commander Thrak checked his weapons for the 10th time. This was his 43rd planetary invasion. They were always the same. Land. Deploy. Watch the locals run in fear. Accept surrender. Move to the next planet. He wasn't cruel. He didn't enjoy the fear of others. But it was necessary. The Empire needed resources. The Empire needed labor. The Empire needed to grow. And weak species like the humans needed to be shown their place in the galactic order. His communicator crackled. Commander Thrak, we're getting unusual readings from the planet's orbital space. What kind of readings? Massive energy signatures. Thousands of them. They weren't there a minute ago. Thrak felt a cold sensation in his chest. How massive? Comparable to ship reactors, sir. But they're coming from objects we catalogued as debris. The cold sensation spread. Alert the fleet. Possible, he never finished the sentence. High above, General Chen had given the order. And in the cold darkness of space, humanity's true defenses came online. They had been there for 60 years, disguised, silent, waiting, thousands of automated weapons platforms that looked like nothing more than dead satellites and space junk. The Caldrith sensors had scanned them, analyzed them, and dismissed them as harmless. Each platform was small. Each platform was old. Each platform had been built during humanity's most paranoid era, when every nation expected nuclear war at any moment. When extinction felt inevitable, each platform was also more advanced than anything the Caldrith Empire had ever built. The quantum targeting systems activated first. They didn't need to calculate trajectory or leading distance. The moment a target was selected, it was already hit. The universe itself was bent to ensure the shot would land. It was physics that the Caldrith scientists didn't even have theories about. The weapons fired, not lasers, not plasma, not missiles. Something that existed in several quantum states at once until it reached its target, at which point it collapsed into pure destructive energy. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, alarms began screaming. Admiral Zixthor stared at his screens in disbelief. His ships were dying, not slowly, not one at a time, dozens at once. Shields that could withstand sustained bombardment from other Keldrith ships simply vanished, along with the ships they were protecting. "Return fire," he roared. "All weapons, target those platforms." The Keldrith fleet opened fire. Hundreds of plasma cannons, particle beams, and kinetic weapons struck at the human defense platforms. It should have been devastating. It should have destroyed them all. Instead, the weapons simply vanished into shield fields that made the attacks look like raindrops hitting an ocean. The human shields didn't just absorb energy. They converted it, stored it, and fed it back into their own power systems. Every attack made them stronger. "Impossible," Zixthor whispered. "Our intelligence said they were primitive. Our scans showed nothing like this." His second officer was frantically working at his console. "Sir, they're launching something from their moon. Unknown weapon type. They're moving at 0.99 light speed. Relativistic kill vehicles. Hunks of metal accelerated to near light speed. At that velocity, a telephone pole had the kinetic energy of a nuclear bomb. And humanity had launched hundreds of them. They struck the Keldrith fleet like the fist of an angry god. Ships that had survived for centuries, that had conquered hundreds of worlds, were simply erased from existence. Matter meeting matter at relativistic speeds didn't explode. It simply ceased to be in any recognizable form. Zixthor's command chair shook violently. "Damage report. Fleet losses at 40% and climbing. The humans haven't even deployed their main battle fleet yet. These are automated defenses. Automated defenses." The words hit Zixthor like a physical blow. This wasn't even humanity's military. This was their home security system. "Full retreat," he ordered. "All ships jump to slip space immediately." But humanity had prepared for that too. The causality weapons had been held in reserve, waiting for exactly this moment. They fired now. Bullets, missiles, beams of energy that existed outside normal time. They hit the Keldrith ships 3 seconds before the order to retreat was given. They destroyed the slip space drives before the drives could be activated. The Keldrith fleet was trapped. And humanity was just getting started. Commander Thrak never made it to Earth's surface. His landing craft was struck by a precision weapon that calculated the exact amount of energy needed to destroy the ship without creating debris that might fall on populated areas. He died instantly, never knowing what hit him. In the bunker, General Chen watched the battle unfold. It had been 90 seconds since she gave the order. The Keldrith fleet was already broken. "Should we offer them surrender?" someone asked. Chen shook her head.
"Not yet."
"Let them understand. Let them truly understand what they tried to do. Then we'll talk." Above Earth, the 3-minute war continued, and the Keldrith Empire learned a hard lesson about underestimating a species that had spent 60 years afraid of its own weapons. Admiral Zixthor had commanded fleets for 30 years. He had fought in 16 major battles. He had never lost. He had never even come close to losing. Now, in the span of 3 minutes, he watched his career, his reputation, and his life crumble around him. "Status," he roared, though his voice cracked with something that might have been fear. 260 ships destroyed, his tactical officer reported, his voice hollow. 194 heavily damaged. Only 46 ships still fully operational. We're still losing ships every few seconds. 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, the humans had destroyed more Keldrith military assets than the Empire had lost in the last 100 years of conquest. On Earth, in the command bunker, General Chen watched the tactical display with no satisfaction, only grim necessity. Each dot that winked out was a ship full of living beings, thousands of souls who had probably just been following orders. But they had come to her home with weapons and threats, and she had a duty to protect her people. "Launch the Singularity torpedoes," she ordered. "Target their capital ships only. Let's end this." From hidden silos on the moon, weapons that humanity had sworn never to use in offensive wars launched silently into the black. They looked almost peaceful, these small cylinders of metal and exotic matter. Each one contained a carefully calibrated mechanism that would create a miniature black hole, sustain it for exactly 2.7 seconds, and then allow it to evaporate through Hawking radiation. Seconds didn't sound like much, but for a black hole, even a tiny one, it was an eternity. The first torpedo reached the Eternal Dominion 30 seconds after launch. The Caldrith Point defense systems tracked it, analyzed it, and tried to shoot it down. Their weapons passed through it as if it wasn't there, because in a sense it wasn't there yet. The torpedo existed in a quantum state, both matter and energy, both present and absent, until the exact moment it reached its target. When it arrived, it activated. A point of absolute darkness appeared next to the Eternal Dominion's hull. For 2.7 seconds it ate. Metal, alloys, electronics, atmosphere, and crew were pulled toward the event horizon at incredible speed. The great warship, 3 kilometers long and home to 15,000 Caldrith warriors, simply crumpled inward like paper being wadded up by an invisible hand. When the singularity evaporated, nothing remained but a dense sphere of compressed matter the size of a basketball, and a rapidly dispersing cloud of exotic particles. Admiral Zixthor saw it happen to his sister ships. One by one, the great capitals of the Caldrith fleet were consumed. He realized with perfect clarity that he was about to die. There would be no glory, no last stand, no song sung about his final battle, just darkness and crushing gravity and then nothing. He reached for his communication panel with a shaking hand. All ships, cease fire, broadcast surrender on all frequencies, shut down all weapon systems. Do it now. The order went out. Across the remains of the fleet, Caldrith commanders frantically powered down their weapons, raised white flags in every language their computers could translate, and broadcast desperate pleas for mercy. The human weapons stopped firing. The sudden silence was almost worse than the battle. The surviving Caldrith crews waited, hardly daring to breathe, wondering if the next second would bring more terrible weapons or if they would be allowed to live. In the command bunker, General Chen accepted a call from Secretary Zhao. The fleet is offering surrender, Chen reported. 12 capital ships remaining, 23 smaller vessels, total surviving crew estimated at 78,000. Orders? Secretary Zhao was quiet for a moment. Accept their surrender. Send medical aid to damaged ships. Retrieve any escape pods. And General, make sure they understand how lucky they are. Chen nodded and opened a channel to the Caldrith fleet. Her face appeared on every surviving ship's view screen. She looked tired. She looked old. She looked like someone who had just done something necessary but terrible. Caldrith Fleet, she said in a calm, measured voice. This is General Sarah Chen of Earth Defense Command. Your surrender is accepted. You will power down all remaining systems except life support. You will submit to boarding for inspection. You will follow all instructions given by our personnel. In return, we will provide medical assistance to your wounded. We will repair life support on damaged vessels, and we will allow you to return home. She paused, letting that sink in. But understand this. We let you survive. We had weapons in reserve that could have destroyed every ship, every escape pod, every floating piece of debris that might have contained a living soul. We chose mercy. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. Do not ever come back to this system with hostile intent. On the bridge of one of the surviving vessels, a young Caldrith officer named Keth stared at the human general's face. She could have killed us all, he whispered. Their weapons. We never had a chance. His captain, a grizzled veteran of 40 years, nodded slowly. I've fought the hive swarms. I've fought the crystalline collective. I've fought rebellions and pirates and desperate last stands. This wasn't a fight. This was an execution that they chose to stop. We didn't lose. We were simply allowed to survive. Across Earth, people watched the sky as the battle ended. They had seen the flashes of light as ships died in orbit. They had felt the ground shake as debris burned up in the atmosphere. But no Caldrith warrior had set foot on their planet. No city had burned. No civilians had died. In New York, Maria Santos held her daughter close as they watched the news. The reporter was saying something about the battle lasting less than 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Maria thought about all the disaster movies she'd watched, all the invasion stories she'd read, where humanity struggled for years against alien conquerors. 4 minutes. Mommy, are the bad aliens gone? Her daughter asked. Yes, baby. They're gone. Did we win? Maria thought about that question. We survived. That's all we ever needed to do. In the weeks that followed, the surviving Caldrith were treated with cautious respect. Human medical teams boarded damaged ships and treated the wounded. Human engineers helped repair life support systems and engines. Food and water were provided. Ambassador Krell, who had survived aboard a diplomatic vessel, found himself sitting across from Secretary Zhao again. "I don't understand," he admitted. "Why are you helping us? We came to conquer you." "Because you didn't know," Zhao replied simply. "Your empire told you we were primitive. Your sensors seem to confirm it. You thought you were following orders, doing your duty. You were wrong, but that doesn't mean you deserve to suffer." "We would have purified your planet," Krell said quietly. "If we had won, millions of your people would have died." "Yes," Zhao agreed. "But you didn't win. And we choose not to become the monsters we could be. That's what makes us different from your empire." Krell clicked his mandibles softly, a gesture of deep respect among his people. "My empire will not believe what happened here. The council will say we were cowards. They will say we exaggerated." Zhao smiled. "That's why we're sending you back with full sensor records. Every scan, every weapon signature, every energy reading. We want your empire to know exactly what happened. We want them to understand that Earth is off limits, not because we hate them, but because we will defend ourselves without hesitation." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the blue sky. "Tell your council something for me, Ambassador. Tell them that humanity stayed home for 60 years because we were afraid of what we might become if we went out into the galaxy with these weapons. Tell them we chose peace over expansion. Tell them we could have built an empire bigger than yours, but we decided to wait until we were wise enough to deserve that power." "And are you?" Krell asked. "Wise enough?" Zhao turned back to him. "Ask me again in another 60 years. For now, we're just trying to be good neighbors to a galaxy that apparently needs a reminder about respecting boundaries." The Kaldrith survivors left Earth's system 3 weeks after the battle. General Chen watched them go from the command center, now mostly quiet and back to routine operations. "Think they learned their lesson?" her second-in-command asked. Chen shrugged. "Some of them will. Some won't. But word will spread. The galaxy will know. Earth is no longer unknown. We're no longer hiding, and anyone who comes here with violence will meet the same fate. And if they come with peace?" For the first time in weeks, Chen smiled. "Then we'll show them the other things humanity is good at. Art, music, science, kindness. We're not monsters. We just defend our home very, very well." She turned away from the screen, showing the retreating Kaldrith ships. "Now comes the hard part. The galaxy knows we exist. The galaxy knows we're powerful. We have to decide what to do with that knowledge. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, Earth was safe. Today, humanity had proven it could defend itself. And today, for the first time in 60 years, people started talking seriously about what might wait for them out there among the stars. The age of isolation was over. The age of humanity's emergence had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Kaldrith survivors jumped back into their home space 3 weeks after leaving Earth. They arrived damaged, traumatized, and carrying the most disturbing intelligence report in the Empire's 1,000-year history. The Grand Council chamber on the capital world of Kaldra Prime was designed to intimidate. It was vast, ancient, and decorated with monuments to conquest. Statues of legendary admirals lined the walls. Banners from conquered worlds hung from the ceiling. The message was clear. The Kaldrith Empire was eternal, unbeatable, destined to rule. Admiral Zixthor stood in the center of the chamber, facing the council. His armor was scratched and dented. His eyes were haunted. He looked like a warrior who had seen the end of the world and somehow survived to tell about it. "You lost 500 ships to a single primitive planet?" Councillor Drath roared. His voice echoed through the chamber. 500! Our greatest fleet, and you dare return here with this cowardly tale? "It's not a tale," Zixthor replied quietly. "It's the truth, and I have the sensor records to prove it." For the next hour, the council watched the battle recordings. They watched their ships die in seconds. They watched weapons that shouldn't exist. They watched a 3-minute war that ended with total defeat. When the recordings finished, the chamber was silent. "This must be a trick," Councillor Vex said finally. Her voice was uncertain. "They manipulated our sensors somehow, made us see things that weren't real." "We lost nearly 400,000 warriors," Zixthor said. "Those deaths were very real." High Councillor Tharn, the oldest member of the council, leaned forward. He had ruled for 60 years. He had overseen the conquest of 100 worlds. He had never lost a war. "Tell me, Admiral, in your professional opinion, could we win if we sent our full fleet, 10,000 ships instead of 500? Zixthor was quiet for a long moment. Every instinct told him to say yes, to tell them that overwhelming numbers would guarantee victory. But he had seen those human weapons. He had watched ships die before they could even react. He had felt the helplessness of facing an enemy so advanced that resistance was meaningless. "No," he said finally. "We would lose 10,000 ships instead of 500. Their weapons operate on principles we don't understand. Their shields are impenetrable. Their targeting is instant and perfect, and those were only their automated defenses. They never deployed their military. We fought their home security system and lost." The council erupted into arguments. Some wanted to declare war anyway. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to pretend Earth didn't exist and forbid any ships from going near human space. But they were interrupted by a message from the Intelligence Division. "Counselors," the Intelligence Director said via hologram, "we need to talk about what we learned about humanity. It's disturbing." In a secure briefing room, a Kaldrith intelligence officer named Vexara presented her findings. She had spent the last month analyzing every piece of data they had collected from Earth. Human broadcasts, human history, human technology. What she found terrified her. "The humans call it the Cold War," she explained to the assembled counselors. "About 60 years ago, their planet was divided into competing factions. They developed nuclear weapons, weapons that could destroy cities. And then they built thousands of these weapons and pointed them at each other." "Madness," Counselor Drath muttered. "They nearly destroyed themselves." "Yes," Vexara agreed. "But that's not the disturbing part. The disturbing part is what they did next. They realized they were on the brink of extinction. So they didn't just stop building weapons. They built better weapons. Worse weapons. Weapons that scared them so much that they made a collective decision as a species to never leave their home system until they were mature enough to be trusted with such power." She pulled up a hologram showing a weapon schematic. The Kaldrith counselors leaned in, trying to understand what they were seeing. "This is what they call a singularity torpedo," Vexara explained. "It creates a miniature black hole. We have theories about such weapons. They've been proven mathematically possible. But we can't build them. The energy requirements are too high. The exotic matter needed doesn't exist in stable form. It should be impossible. And yet they built it," High Counselor Tharn said quietly. "What else?" Vexara pulled up more files. Causality-breaking weapons that hit their target before being fired. Shields that convert incoming energy into power for themselves. Quantum targeting systems that achieve perfect accuracy across light minutes. Relativistic projectiles that turn telephone poles into weapons of mass destruction. She paused. "And according to their own historical records, these weapons are 60 years old. We don't know what their current military technology looks like." The room was silent. Finally, Counselor Vex spoke. "How is this possible? We've explored thousands of systems. We've encountered hundreds of species. We're the most advanced military power in the galaxy. How can one isolated planet be so far ahead of us?" "I believe I know why," Vexara said. She pulled up a graph showing technological advancement over time. "Look at this. This is the Kaldrith Empire's technological progress over the last 1,000 years. And this," she highlighted another line, "is the galactic average. We're all advancing at roughly the same slow rate. Do you see the pattern?" Counselor Drath studied the graph. "We're stagnant. We've been using essentially the same technology for centuries." "Exactly," Vexara confirmed. "We conquered our first world 1,000 years ago. We spread across the galaxy. We found species with similar technology levels. We fought wars with weapons that were familiar. We got comfortable. We stopped innovating because we didn't need to innovate. Why develop better weapons when the ones we have work fine against everyone we fight?" She pulled up another graph, this one showing humanity's technological progress. The line shot upward at an almost vertical angle. "Humans stayed on one planet," Vexara continued. "They had nowhere to expand. Nothing to distract them, so they just kept inventing. They competed with each other. They scared themselves with their own weapons. They pushed themselves to the edge of extinction, and then kept pushing. In 60 years of isolation, they advanced further than we have in 1,000 years of empire." High Counselor Tharn stared at the graphs. He had ruled the Empire for 6 decades. He had always believed in Kaldrith superiority. Now he was facing the reality that his empire was built on outdated technology and the weakness of their enemies. "What do we do?" he asked quietly. "I recommend a quarantine," Vexara said. "Declare their system off limits. Any ship that enters human space does so at their own risk. Let the humans have their isolation. Maybe in a few centuries they'll be willing to talk to us as equals." "Equals?" Counselor Drath sputtered. We are the Kaldrith Empire. We don't have equals. With respect, Counselor, Admiral Zixthor said. We just found our superiors. The sooner we accept that, the better chance we have of surviving. While the Kaldrith Council debated, a single Kaldrith scout ship slipped away from the fleet. Lieutenant Keth had been a junior officer aboard one of the surviving vessels. He had watched his friends die in the battle at Earth. He had also watched the humans provide medical care to the survivors. He had been treated by a human doctor who had worked for 16 hours straight to save Kaldrith lives. Now he was going back. He approached the Mars colony slowly, his ship's weapons powered down, broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency. He was met by a patrol craft piloted by a human named Captain Rodriguez. Kaldrith vessel, this is Earth Defense Patrol. State your intentions. My name is Keth, he replied in carefully practiced human English. I come in peace. I wish to learn. I wish to understand. Will you let me land? There was a long pause. Keth waited, his heart pounding. Finally, the response came. Keth, you're cleared to land at Mars Station 7. Welcome to human space. This time as a friend. Keth felt something he had never experienced before. Hope. Hope that maybe the galaxy didn't have to be about conquest and submission. Hope that maybe there was another way. He landed on Mars and was met by Secretary Zhao herself. She smiled at him. Lieutenant Keth, we've been expecting someone like you. Come, we have much to discuss. As they walked through the Mars colony, Keth saw humans and a few aliens from species he didn't recognize working together. Scientists, engineers, artists. Not conquerors, not slaves. Just people living their lives. How? He asked simply. How what? Jay replied. How do you live like this? Without empire? Without conquest? How do you survive? Zhao stopped and looked at him. By understanding that strength isn't just about weapons, Lieutenant. It's about cooperation, innovation, curiosity. We spent 60 years learning that lesson. We're still learning it. But we're happy to teach others who want to learn. Keth realized in that moment that the Kaldrith Empire had conquered hundreds of worlds but had learned nothing. They had spread across the stars but had never grown. They were ancient but not wise, strong but not advanced, and Earth, isolated and afraid, had somehow become everything the Empire should have been. News of Keth's defection reached the Kaldrith Council. Some called for his execution in absentia. Others suggested it might be an opportunity. Maybe one Kaldrith learning from the humans could benefit the Empire. High Counselor Tharn made his decision. Let him stay. Let him learn. And when he returns... 6 months after the battle, Earth held the most important meeting in human history. Leaders from every nation gathered in Geneva. Not to discuss weapons or defenses, but to answer a simple question. What now? General Chen stood before the assembly. She looked different than she had during the battle. More rested, maybe even hopeful. The galaxy knows we exist, she began. The galaxy knows we're powerful. The question before us today is, what kind of neighbors do we want to be? The American president spoke first. Some of my advisors suggest we take advantage of our technological superiority, expand, build an empire. We could bring order to the galaxy. Order through conquest? The Chinese premier asked. We'd become everything we fought against, everything we stayed home to avoid becoming. But we're not conquerors, the Indian Prime Minister argued. We're defenders. If there are other species out there being oppressed by empires like the Kaldrith, don't we have a responsibility to help them? Secretary Zhao held up her hand for quiet. Before we decide anything, I think we should hear from someone who's been learning about the galaxy firsthand. Lieutenant Keth, would you join us? The Kaldrith officer entered the room nervously. 6 months living among humans had changed him. He wore simple clothes now, not armor. He had learned to smile, something Kaldrith rarely did. And he had learned that the universe was far bigger and more complex than his empire had taught him. Thank you for having me, Keith said in English. I've spent the last 6 months studying human history and talking to your scientists. I think I understand now why you're so advanced. But I also understand why you're afraid of that advancement. He pulled up a hologram showing the Kaldrith Empire and dozens of other species scattered across the galaxy. This is the galaxy as my empire sees it. Conquered worlds in red, neutral worlds in yellow, unknown space in gray, simple, clean, organized. The hologram shifted. This is the galaxy as I see it now. Each of these species has their own history, their own dreams, their own right to exist. The Caldrith Empire didn't see them as people. We saw them as resources, territory, numbers in a report. He looked around the room. If you expand into the galaxy with your weapons, you could conquer everything. But you'd have to become conquerors to do it. The question is, can you help without conquering? Can you protect without controlling? The room was silent. Finally, Dr. Morrison spoke. What if we offered technology sharing? Not weapons, but medicine, food production, clean energy. The things that improve lives without creating dependencies. And what if species come to us seeking protection from empires like the Caldrith? Asked the Russian president. Do we turn them away? General Chen thought about this. No, we don't turn them away, but we don't build their militaries for them either. We teach them to defend themselves. We give them the tools and the knowledge, and then we step back. We're not saviors. We're not rulers. We're just neighbors who happen to have good tools. Over the next weeks, humanity crafted what would become known as the Solar Accords. The principles were simple. Humanity would venture into the galaxy not as conquerors, but as partners. They would share technology that helped people live better lives. They would defend themselves and their allies without hesitation. But they would never seek to control other species. The first test of this policy came from an unexpected source. The Velan Collective, a federation of small species on the edge of Caldrith space, sent a desperate message to Earth. The Caldrith were threatening invasion. Could humanity help? The Security Council met in emergency session. Some argued that this was exactly the kind of intervention they should avoid. Others argued that watching people die when they could prevent it would make them complicit in those deaths. General Chen proposed a third option. We don't fight their war for them. We teach them to fight their own war. We give them shield technology. We give them sensor systems. We give them communication networks. And we make it very clear to the Caldrith that any attack on the Velan will be considered an attack on Earth's allies. Will the Caldrith respect that? Someone asked. Chen smiled grimly. They lost 500 ships in 3 minutes. Yeah, they'll respect it. Ambassador Keth, now serving as humanity's liaison to the Caldrith Empire, delivered the message personally to the Grand Council. High Counselor Tharn listened carefully. So the humans are building alliances now, Tharn said. Should we be concerned? Respectfully, Counselor, Keth replied. You should be relieved. The humans could have come to Caldrith space and conquered us. Instead, they're offering us a choice. Leave the smaller species alone or face consequences. That's generous considering what we tried to do to them. Tharn clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. And what would you advise, Keth? You've lived among them. You know them better than anyone in the Empire. I'd advise peace, Keth said simply. The humans don't want war. They don't want territory. They just want to be left alone and to help people who ask for help. Give them that, and they'll give us access to technology that could advance our empire by centuries. The council debated for days. Finally, they made their decision. The Caldrith Empire would withdraw from its border conflicts. It would open diplomatic relations with Earth. And it would begin the slow, painful process of transforming from a conquering empire into something else, something better. News of this spread across the galaxy. Species that had been oppressed for generations suddenly saw hope. The Caldrith Empire, the galaxy's greatest military power, had backed down from a conflict. And Earth, the mysterious planet that had humiliated the Empire, was offering help to anyone who needed it. Within a year, Earth had 50 diplomatic missions across the galaxy. Human scientists worked alongside alien researchers. Human engineers taught advanced manufacturing techniques. Human doctors shared medical technology that saved millions of lives. But humanity was careful. They remembered their own history. They remembered how easily good intentions could become control. So they established strict rules. No permanent military bases on alien worlds. No controlling shares in alien governments. No technology that could be easily weaponized. Help but don't control. Teach but don't rule. General Chen retired from active duty and became Earth's first ambassador to the galactic community. On her first day, she met with representatives from 40 different species. They all had the same questions. Why are you helping us? Asked the Velan ambassador. What do you want in return? Chen thought about how to answer. Finally, she said, 60 years ago, we almost destroyed ourselves. We built weapons so terrible that we scared ourselves into isolation. We stayed home because we were afraid of what we might do to the galaxy, but isolation taught us something. It taught us that we survive better together than apart. It taught us that strength without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. We're helping because we finally grew up enough to deserve the power we have, and we hope that by helping we can create a galaxy where no species has to be afraid of their neighbors. The ambassadors looked at each other. It was such a human answer, hopeful and cautious at the same time, powerful and humble. They weren't sure if they believed it yet, but they wanted to. 5 years after the battle, Earth launched its first deep space exploration fleet. Not warships, research vessels, diplomatic craft, medical ships. They traveled to distant stars, made first contact with new species, shared knowledge, and built friendships. But they always remembered the weapons that waited back home. The defenses that could destroy a fleet in 3 minutes. The terrible power they had mastered and chosen not to use except in protection of home and allies. Lieutenant Keth, now Captain Keth, served aboard one of these human exploration vessels. He had chosen to stay with humanity rather than return to his empire. When asked why, he always gave the same answer. The Kaldrith taught me about conquest. The humans taught me about purpose. I know which lesson I value more. On Earth, in the command center that had coordinated the destruction of the Kaldrith fleet, General Chen's replacement watched the deep space monitors. The weapons platforms were still there, still hidden, still ready. They would always be ready. But now they protected not just Earth, but a growing community of species who had chosen cooperation over conquest. Dr. Morrison visited the command center one day. He looked at the defensive systems and shook his head. "Do you think we'll ever be able to disarm these?" he asked. The new general, a young woman named Park, thought about that. Maybe, someday, when the galaxy is safe enough that no one needs weapons like this, when every species chooses peace not because they're afraid, but because they've learned it's better. Until then, we watch, we wait, we hope, and we're ready. She pulled up a display showing human ships across the galaxy. Scientists, engineers, teachers, doctors, diplomats. But look at what we're becoming. We're not conquerors. We're not an empire. We're something new, something better. We're the species that was so afraid of our own power that we learned wisdom before we learned ambition, and now we're teaching that wisdom to anyone who wants to learn. Far across the galaxy, in a sector that had been marked as unexplored, something ancient stirred. Old sensors dormant for 10,000 years detected the increased activity in the galaxy. Ships moving, energy signatures, communication networks, life thriving and expanding.